evening, everyone, and welcome to Startup Central. This is the first and only daily show in India dedicated to startups and entrepreneurs. I'm Avan Dabash. Well, our big story for the day is Ola's mega funding, where they're looking to raise close to $2 billion. We'll get to that. We've got some guests lined up as well. But first, let's kickstart the show, giving you some perspective on number crunching in the VC space. What are some of the big deals that have taken place? Well, the first one is remember, you've got 6 deals worth about $21 million that took place this entire week. Amongst the top VC deals, it's Rupeek, which will be seeking close to $12 million in funding. You also have SignUp, which has raised close to $6 million, while Vyranserve Tech has raised close to $1.6 million. It's cricketer Chris Gayle as well, who has bought stake in AR startup, that's FlipApp, as well as Rajan Anand, who has backed matchmaking app maker Inclove. So these have been some of the big deals that have taken place, close to 6 deals in the VC space in this entire week. But the one deal that we're focusing on full throttle today would definitely be in the online cab aggregator space. And it looks like the competition is only heating up. Reports suggest that Ola is on its way to raise a whopping $2 billion. This is from the likes of SoftBank and the Chinese internet conglomerate Tencent. We've got my colleague Rahul Dayama. He joins in from the Startup Hub in Bangalore, and he's going to give us some more details on this. But remember, this would definitely heat up the overall competition right now, where you do have players such as Uber as well, who currently have quite a big presence. In fact, let's connect then first up with Mrugang Gudgutia, Head Consumer Internet at Redseer, who joins in on the phone line. Thanks so much for being with us. To start off with, how are you looking at this fund infusion? If it does come by, you have a sum of close to $2 billion that's really been looked at. Do you think that this money would help Ola to continue to really up its game?
Definitely. I think this is a very much needed investment by the Indian cab aggregators market. And I think what we believe is that, not only will this sort of heat up the competitive game much more, we see that Ola should be able to take the fight to Uber much more closely. But more importantly, we believe this funding will give the industry a kind of platform to develop their platform over the long run. So right now it's all been about price wars, discounting, giving cheaper fares. But this should give them some kind of funding to invest, to develop their long-term strategy, maybe go into smaller cities, maybe invest in technology. So I think it's a combination of short-term and long-term win for the industry, which this funding will enable.
Yeah, and regarding the data in terms of market share, that largely indicates that Ola has an edge over Uber. What do you think has worked for Ola?
So I think they have benefited from multiple factors. So they had a definite kind of first mover advantage. They also offered cash payments right from the beginning, which Uber was, of course, late to offer in the market. And they had a very big supply of drivers right from the beginning. So you could just book a Ola cab and expect the drivers to come in really quickly. So together you have a good brand recall, a cash payment facility, big driver network, and then of course innovations like Ola Share and Ola Select Pass, all those other things. So together, these 3-4 things have consistently, historically given Ola the edge in the market.
Oh yes, indeed it has, and the strategy has really worked out for them. Unlike Uber, that perhaps has not been able to spread themselves too thin in a lot of cities. While Ola is going deeper into some of the smaller towns, do you think this is the right approach for them to go, or do you think that perhaps adopting a different approach would be more prudent?
So, of course, Ola has been operating in, I think, more than 100 cities for quite some time now. But what all the data points show is that most of the business for both the players still comes from the top 8-10 cities. I would say even to the extent of more than 70-75% business comes from the bigger cities. So while, of course, Ola has expanded, but I would say the market in the smaller cities is still a bit nascent in terms of sort of adopting the cab aggregator model, which means that a lot of innovation and investment is needed by the companies to develop these smaller cities, which is where we think this funding could be deployed by Ola in the future to maybe develop these smaller markets better.
Okay, stay with us, Mrigank. I really want to connect with you and talk a little bit more about the overall competition that's heating up within this space. But in the meantime, I'm going to take it across to my colleague. He's joining in from the Startup Hub, that's Bangalore, and Rahul Dayama is with us. Rahul, if this funding goes through, we're talking big money, $2 billion. That's a lot of money. They're going to take on Uber with this hefty sum.
That's right, Avan. 2 billion all in all is really a massive funding round. And if this entire round goes through, it will be the second biggest investment in the startup space. Because remember, SoftBank Vision Fund had backed Flipkart, and that funding deal was valued at about $2.5 billion at what SoftBank had invested. But this time around, remember, this is not a one-off round that is really taking place. Last November 2016 was when Ola raised about $250 million from SoftBank. They raised another round recently. They've also closing a round with Tencent, according to some reports, of that is 40 million. So this is an ongoing round, really. So over the next few weeks is when entirely this will be official. But these are smaller chunks of money that Ola is raising, keeping in mind the bigger aim of 2 billion. So as you pointed out, there's SoftBank really in picture. Also, there is Tencent, which has been betting big on the Indian startup ecosystem. Tencent coming on board would really give Ola another strategic investor apart from SoftBank really on it. Also, you have the UCT Ratan Tata backed fund that is also taking part, and some other early investors also who are betting big on Ola. So yes, you're right, 2 billion is a lot of money, but this is really going to come in a phased manner.
Okay, thanks very much, Rahul, for joining in and breaking that down for us. Mrigank, I was talking about how the overall competition in the space now is only going to hot up. We've seen that there have been price wars in the past that have taken place several times. If Ola does manage to garner this $2 billion, there could be room for further discounts, further aggressive pricing on the anvil.
Right. So I think discounting is, of course, going to happen in of course, a bigger way going forward. Especially as I talked about previously, in the smaller cities, you might see the game hotting up even more. Of course, bigger city will always see a chunk of discounting increasing. But along with the discounts, we really believe this funding is going to motivate Ola to sort of put in more money in their long-term investments. Maybe in developing their technology, coming up with new ride innovations. So we had carpool, we had autos. Autos is a very big growing market. We see tremendous growth there. So maybe they would want to invest in these smaller pockets of growth and try to sort of drive their overall growth, not just from the usual cabs, but all these newer sort of transportation models, because that is what is needed in India. We see these online models accounting for barely 5% of total rides taking place. So it's a huge opportunity, and I think that's where investment is going to go.
And, while perhaps it's too early in the day to assess, do you think India can have two major players in this category? Because there are, of course, reports that indicate that SoftBank is eyeing a stake in Uber. If that happens, the overall equation also changes completely, which would mean that there would be two players really dominating the space.
Correct. But I think, in terms of domination, I would say that right now the market, the way it is, we can still have two sort of big players working side by side. Both of them can focus on different categories and sort of still have a good growth coming in. For example, Ola could increase its offering in rentals, in autos and other categories where Uber is not really focusing on. So that could be a big independent niche area for it, and Uber could focus on the metro cities, the shorter rides, and so. So right now, I think the market still has a long way to go before the kind of consolidation seen in China takes place, where, something like Didi takes 80-90% share. So I think there is space for both to survive as of now. Of course, if SoftBank comes in and sort of tries to push for some kind of Uber stake and then maybe a merger, then things would change, but unlikely as of now.
Okay, Mrigank, let you go on that note. Thanks very much for joining in and giving us a view on the overall fundraise and what it would potentially mean for the sector.